Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. Both Mom and I are grateful that you can join us for another week. And we're excited today. We have on with us Jenny Carrell. Jenny is an alignment and manifestation mentor, Reiki master, psychic medium, and tutor in psychic development. After navigating profound life challenges and deep personal transformation, Jenny now dedicates her work to helping others awaken their consciousness and step into their true power. Blending energy, healing, quantum awareness, neuroscience, and intuitive guidance, she teaches people how to master their energy, understand how their vibration shapes their reality, and consciously creates life aligned with their soul's purpose, joy, and abundance. So, welcome, Jenny. We're super excited to have you on the podcast with us today.
Thank you so much, ladies. I am so privileged. It's my first podcast from Canada. So I'm obviously based in England. So you're my first Canadians.
Yay! That's so exciting. Well, thank you. We're extremely grateful that you picked us to be your first podcast to be
Yes,
on.
we are.
So,
Yes,
Oh,
we
bless.
so we'd love to hear a little bit about you. And we were talking a little bit about some different topics before we actually popped on air here. So one of the ones that we thought would be interesting for people would be about being a starseed soul. So
Mhm.
you know that you've had an experience with being a starseed soul. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So my understanding, I guess, there could be lots of different ways we could class a starseed. So, I mean, we call with Dolores Cannon, the famous Dolores Cannon. She used to talk about the star seeds or the volunteers, and for me, it's I only actually tend to work in my kind of business with starseed souls. And starseed souls, for me, we are all coming in on family lines where there's lots of generational trauma, sometimes complex childhood trauma. And it's around us all starting to awaken together and remind ourselves why we're here and our dual mission, that we've come in to heal the lines and also to help raise the collective consciousness of the planet. And it's not always an easy journey. I suffered a lot of complex trauma as a child, and it wasn't until probably around 36, so about 4 years ago, so I've just turned 40, that I had a massive awakening. I was already, kind of spiritually aware, but I was living very much in a victim state, and I didn't know my purpose, didn't know my mission. And it was a real push from the universe to wake up. And it was the fact that the suffering I needed to go through to wake up, looking back, was probably one of the biggest gifts I was ever given. And I work now with souls who are at that stage, probably only about 2 years behind me in the sense of the ascension journey. But it's an absolute privilege, because when we kind of come out of that victim state, and when we start realizing that we are these advanced souls, and we have come in from a higher vibration than our parents say, and we learn to, stop blaming others, and come back to working out how we're actually going to heal this stuff, that's when the real magic happens. And the people that you meet along this journey, I mean, they're the most fantastic. I guess we call them our soul tribe. And for me, it wasn't always an easy journey, and sometimes it still isn't. I think with what's happening on the planet right now, a lot of us are questioning stuff, and obviously our spiritual DNA, absolutely perfect condition, but our light codes are coming more online, psychic abilities are heightening, and we are starting to question why we're here, as opposed to kind of living in what I'd call like a 3D matrix. So it's definitely a shift, and it definitely has its challenges, but for me, it's, I think, one of the coolest missions we could have on the planet, if that kind of all makes sense.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense. And so for us, as we're on our spiritual path, what I'm interested in is how do we figure out what our soul purpose is and
Mhm.
what kind of star seeds we are and why
Mhm.
we're meant to be even here.
So, so for me, if I answer the second question first, what kind of star seeds are we? For me, I don't really focus on that just because I think we can get really attached to labels and identity. That's the kind of human side of us, isn't it? Oh, if I'm like a Palladian bloodline, or, it's almost like an attachment stuff. Oh, I've got these special gifts. And it's not to say that we haven't come from those kind of, specific kind of bloodlines and things. For me, it's more around recognizing that I think our purpose, or my purpose, I can really only talk about myself, but I've witnessed this in the clients that I work with, that our purpose is really to heal the generational lines. And that's why we are these courageous souls doing this kind of inner and shadow work, coming in on the lines, healing stuff up to 7 generations back. And part of our purpose, is that. And the next purpose is, well, how am I going to, one, heal the stuff that's affected me and my family lines, but also how am I going to help others? And we really are servers of humanity. And for me, that is the most joyous purpose you could have. And we're all doing it in lots of different ways. Like the people I've met along my journey so far, not all of them are psychic mediums or mentors or coaches in this kind of field, but they're all doing it in their own way. And it's a vibration thing, is what I'll say. It's the more you kind of open yourself up and you start healing and connecting and following in alignment. So alignment first, energy first, then sort of action. What I've worked out is that is for me the most joyous thing that we could be doing on the planet, is just following the most excited energy that we get. Even if there's a little bit of fear involved, I've worked out that's kind of intuition going, go this way. So I hope that answered your question.
No,
It did.
It did, absolutely.
It does, and it keeps bringing us clearer and clearer of what they're trying to give to us, right?
Yeah.
And what they're trying to say to us, we're learning all the time. Like I just had another lesson just a couple days ago, which takes you into another shift sort of thing, but it was good, because
Yeah.
it's one more thing. It's closer to where you're trying to travel to be.
Yeah.
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 I completely agree. I think we're never going to not do the work. And I think I always like to say to people, especially if they blame people for, hurting them in the past, and this, well, why am I able to do this work and others aren't? Why am I able to help in this way and others aren't? Well, because you are the soul that is probably coming in with a bigger toolkit to do it, and we all kind of start connecting to go, you're not going mad here. Like, I think the same as you, and this is where the collective, tribe comes in. But we are always working on ourselves. It's not something that I think we'll ever stop doing. But for me, living in a conscious way and having an understanding of the type of souls that we are brings a different kind of joy, I guess, in living, because the world, things happen and life happens, and it's definitely a perspective when you start thinking around, how am I going to be the alchemist in my life, and how am I going to bring joy to myself and then to others? So for me, the journey is always happening, and it's almost like we've got the golden ticket to be here. But I never thought that for 36 years. I really wanted just to get off the planet, if I'm honest. So it's been a massive shift.
Yeah, well, which is great. And I feel like the way that I've been feeling lately a little bit, and so I feel like I'm sort of going through some kind of shift, some kind of ascension thing, is it's almost like when I look at myself in the mirror, it's not even me, and it's almost
Mhm.
like I need to rip out of this whatever this
Take
mask,
your clothes off.
this thing
Yeah.
over me, to shift, because it's like I don't recognize this person that's staring
Yeah.
back at me.
Yeah.
So would you say that that is part of an ascension thing? That's part of
Mhm.
finding your purpose and your mission?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we all go through like a mass realization that we are the being human, not the human being. But we've obviously still got to be in our flesh suits. And through my own kind of experience, I worked out there's only about 1% of our soul or light quotient in the body. Because we're so big, we can't physically fit on the third dimension. So around 99% sits about eighth or ninth dimension, which we call higher self. So we're really more in the spirit realm right now than we are here. So it's kind of an illusion or a kind of game, or a simulation. But I think when you have an awakening, it can feel really scary, because what happens is ego, or the brain, which is built for survival, goes, oh my God, this person is stepping into awareness. This is going to get scary. And I think the more you go along this journey and you start recognizing what you really are, and I don't actually know if we possibly could comprehend exactly what's going on. I can remember Spirit saying that it would be like describing algebra to an ant, because we, in the third dimension, only 1% in the body, this brain is only going to be able to contain so much information. I really don't think, if anyone says, I know, I've got it all figured out, I really wouldn't believe them. But
No.
you can have these kind of snippets of information, but I think it's called, they would call it the dark night of the soul. I would actually call it ego death, or you stepping into awareness. And when you do that, it means you're going to have to get really conscious about your subconscious, and because that's what's creating your reality. And when we can step into awareness and really take control and master our minds, that is when the real magic starts happening. So when we actually create consciously as opposed to unconsciously. But it can feel scary, because the more you step into awareness, the more you're going to lose people. You're going to lose the attachment to things. And your ego is going to have a panic attack, because in theory, you're going to lose about 95% of what you thought you actually are. And that's why I believe we're all connecting, because I think it's a way of spirit working through us and the universe saying, look, we can't all be going mad here. We're all thinking more or less the same things. We've got these ideas and we're all speaking the same language. And that's why I think, creating community, having podcasts where people are expressing this stuff is so important, because if others see you doing it, then they will come out and they'll have the courage to do the same. I always kind of think we are kind of maybe the way showers. So I don't know about you ladies, but I have always spoken the truth. If someone asked me about what I do, I was never in a so-called spiritual closet. And if they didn't like it, then they moved away. And I guess that's the universe way of, redirecting me somewhere else. But the more I've done that, the more I've worked out, it gets pretty magical, because then you get the good people in. This is where you get the people who will resonate with our kind of vibration.
I find too, the more you have your toolkit, if you're in the physical world, it'd be heavy, but the more you put in your toolkit doing what we do, the lighter we get. So,
Absolutely.
And it's a beautiful feeling, because we have a sense of belonging more so of where we're going and where we want to go, our intentions.
Yeah. I think it can be really hard, especially for children as well. And I'm not sure if you experienced this in your childhood, where the starseed souls, you question a lot. And I mean, I question fear-based systems, used to look up the stars and go, take me home, used to have dreams of ETs, and which weren't actually dreams, it was just on the astral. And obviously spirit communication really early on. And our society is not designed for us in that respect. And that's why it can feel really alienating for us growing up, and us questioning, is there something wrong with me? And when we're hypersensitive as well, it can cause so many challenges. But luckily, I think the more of us that are awakening, the more, conscious we become. The children coming in on the planet now have conscious parents, or getting parents with a higher vibration. So they don't have to do the work that I guess we're doing right now, because we are literally going like this and let's go, and that's why I say we're so courageous, because it's really tough at times.
Yeah, it is. And, I find it really funny because one of our youngest grandchildren is quite intuitive and sees a lot of beings and things. And so it's really interesting how I just became a part of their lives. And so now they have either myself or my mom to reach out to, be able to say, like, what's happening? What do I do? Right? Because she's feeling at a loss, because she's like, I don't want to necessarily squash this and discourage it, but it's kind of freaking me out all at the same time.
Yeah.
Totally understand.
Yeah. I think that's amazing that they have like you to go to, because if we don't, I mean, to be fair, my mum and dad were always very open to spirit. I used to say stuff, but they didn't, I think, really knew the extent of what was going on. And as a child, spirit would always show it as like animals, but I would see people as well, and I would hear their voices. I would see them just before going off to sleep. And it wasn't until adulthood, and I remember reading a book on mediumship because I thought, am I a medium if I can do this? And it was saying if you see people before you go off to sleep, that's spirit and you're a medium. And I was like, really? Oh my God. And I just thought it was normal. I had to say, I didn't really think anything of it. But it's great if so my children, I've got two daughters, we actually practice channeling together. We have a game where we talk to the angels and we ask them for a sign, and then my daughter Evie's very clairvoyant, so she'll get the image straight away, and then obviously the image will come in. And this is how I kind of train people when I do my psychic tutoring. It's like we actually are all born psychic mediums because we're spirit in a human body. It's just remembering to communicate out of body. But every single person that I have ever trained, including men and women, all can do it from day one. There is not one person that isn't able to talk to spirit. Right. And that is something I kind of shout about, because when we get our connection to spirit, and we remember that connection, life obviously changes very quickly because you question your reality. Okay, there might be something else going on here. So what would that mean for me? And what would that mean for my life path and purpose and all of this stuff? But it's great that if you're really open, and then your grandchildren can talk to you like that, because yeah, otherwise they can get fearful of it. And it's having someone in the know-how to explain it that it kind of takes away the fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you do that with your children, because
that's cool.
I think more and more people are, right? And seeing those things, but I didn't know that when you see all those faces at night before you go to bed, because sometimes I'm like, whoa, okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot.
It's just spirit.
So what would you say to someone then that is spiritual or on their spiritual path, and then they're feeling a little bit disconnected from spirit and talking to spirit and trusting spirit? Would you see that's more of our ego stepping in then at that point to shelter or block spirit from being there?
Absolutely. They can talk to spirit whenever they want, and spirit will give them the messages. I think the biggest block to mediumship or spirit communication is trusting the information you receive. So that what I said that I did with Evie in particular, who's my 8-year-old, we're learning, or she's learning. I mean, she gets the images straight away. It's a game. And that's how I started communication, when I was actively trying to communicate, to go, hang on a minute, am I actually a medium here? And then obviously I worked out everyone's a medium, but at different levels, obviously. But ego absolutely will not, what that logical mind is going to come in and go, you've made it up. And the thing is, most people's mind is running about 70,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of those are unconscious. So if you've got monkey mind going on, and spirit are trying to channel the information through your crown chakra into the antenna, which is the brain, then it's going to be mixed up with all the other stuff that they're saying to themselves. So the first thing to do would be learning how to quieten the mind. And to do that, you're going to have to start reprogramming your subconscious and listening to what you're saying to yourself, start healing, clear the channel. Because neuroscience has now proven that thought happens outside of the brain, and we are the biggest antenna. So the brain's the antenna. Solar plexus, I think, is kind of where the broadcasting signal is being sent out into what we call the quantum field. And when spirit communication comes in, I've kind of worked out about 99% of the time we're being channeled. And it's just people are unaware of it. So becoming aware of it would mean creating the space to actually, come into the body and go, what do you want to show me? Or, asking for a sign, which again, spirit's given them. They haven't made it up. Nothing is created that way. They're just kind of attuning to the frequency to get the image that spirit's given them. That's what I love. I used to think I'd made the signs up. No, spirit's given it to me. So, because they can already see obviously what's coming in. So that was probably the easiest and quickest way to build on spirit communication. Ask your guides, close your eyes, ask your guides for a sign, and the first 3 seconds would be normally when it would come in. Anything after that will be ego going, you've made it up. And that's how you build trust in the information. But the thing for me is, I worked out it's not really trust in spirit, it's trust in themselves. And everything is a mirror of us, including communication with spirit. So if someone is not trusting of themselves, then they're going to find it really hard to trust information that has no kind of logical sense if their brain wants the exact, well, you can prove it by science now, but it's the case where the brain would get involved and say, you've made it up. Does that
Yeah,
kind of make sense?
it
It's accessible to
makes total
everyone
sense.
from the offset.
Yeah.
it makes 100% sense to me, because my brain, I'm very spiritual and I'm very much on that path, but then can be very left-brained. And so then I do question that, right? Because those will come in and I'm like,
Yeah,
was that real? Did I make that up? And I've been doing this forever, but you still get those
yeah,
little moments of time that are that. So I actually recently have been back practicing of, yeah, show me a sign, or, angels help me with this, thank you for helping me make this happen. And it's happening. And I'm
yeah,
like, okay, yeah, okay. I have that
I'm
connection.
getting it.
I just blocked it out. That's why I was wondering, because I've heard a lot of people recently say about being disconnected from their heart and then their mind
yeah.
and soul connection.
Yeah, you really need.
Yeah, and I think that would come down to a lot of people live in survival mode, and a lot of people will live up in the brain as opposed to in the body. And obviously, if we've got the disconnect from the heart and brain, so we haven't got heart brain coherence going on, that's going to cause havoc, because one, you're going to be sending a distorted signal out into the quantum field, so you'll be manifesting unconsciously, you won't be manifesting consciously. Two, because your brain signal and the heart signal's all over the place, you're not going to be in the creative mindset, and you're not going to be so easily tapped into source. And when you do a lot of inner and shadow work and you bring the nervous system from the sympathetic nervous system back into parasympathetic, what happens is, actually, they've proven again by neuroscience, this back part of the brain comes online. And so when we're doing our mediumship and stuff, this part all lights up. And obviously, we've got our pineal gland as well. But this is fascinating for me. That lights up and they can't work out why. But what I would describe it as is, you kind of get into this state of euphoria. And it's that state of, it's almost, I've never done psychedelics, but I can imagine what it feels like. You just have this state of connection to everything. And I think this is when you start to really awaken and you clear the trauma from the light, trauma from the body, because that's accessible from day one. It's just we've forgotten about it. And when you live in that state, it's joy and contentment every day. Even if life throws curveballs at you, you can still access that. And that would be your really strong connection to source energy, spirit, universal energy, quantum field, however you want to call it. But people, I always think it's interesting, when we have that term of, oh, I'm spiritual. Well, a lot of people say, and I'm not saying this about you, but I say a lot of people, when they say they're spiritual, I'm like, so what inner work have you done? Have you reprogrammed your subconscious mind? Because you're currently, manifesting your reality at 95% unconscious. And they look at you and they're like, oh no, I just got all the crystals, I do this, I do that. But for me, spirituality is, one, you are spiritual because you're spirit in a human body. But part of that is unprogramming yourself from 95% of what you thought you were. And that's where it takes the courage to do that, because you are going to come up against ego all the way. And this is why I think, the starseed souls, or the volunteers, however we want to call it, the awakened souls, we're the ones with this toolkit, because most people will give up. They might start it and they might give up. And some of them are not meant to wake up in this lifetime. And I think for a lot of us, we always, at the start of our journeys, we really want to help everyone. And we, desperate, please wake up, come over to this side, it's so much better. And then you work out, actually, what I had to work out was people's suffering is needed for them to awaken. So who am I to interfere with their suffering? It doesn't mean you can't walk alongside them. But I always think that term's interesting if someone says I'm spiritual, because I'm like, what does that actually mean to you? Does that make sense?
It does. It does really make a lot of sense, and really makes you think about, like, when you were saying that, I was like, yeah, what does it mean to me? What does that encompass for me? And as much as I've been on this journey, and I meditate and I connect and do all those things, there's also a part of me lately, like I said, I've been going through this shift. So it's like where you're saying about the reprogramming, and that really, I can feel that, because it's like I need to reprogram some things in my mind and deal with some of these traumas that I didn't even realize were traumas as my life. So what's your suggestion to people if they're
Yeah.
just kind of how do you start not just becoming a survivalist and not living in this trauma that you don't even
Yeah.
recognize?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the first part of that is recognizing that you have a choice. Because most people say if they're living in the lower states, the lower vibrations, so say we're in survival mode, and your body assumes it's running from a big saber-toothed tiger, it's because it knows no different, the subconscious between reality and non-reality. It's just going to go on whatever you're feeding it. If it's fear, it's going to still think it's in survival, running from the tiger. It's not going to be in a state to go, oh, I'm just going to do a bit of meditation here, or I'm going to live my life's purpose and I'm going to unprogram myself. So the first part to do is recognize that you actually have a choice to come out of victim state or survival state. And that takes someone making a decision. And a lot of people say they want to do it and they don't, because of course they are very programmed still, and their whole brain is going, we're not built to make, it's not built to make you happy, it's built to keep you alive, the brain. And obviously most people believe they are the brain and they are the thoughts and all of this. So what happened to me along my journey is one of the first things that I did was I had to get to a point where I really didn't want to be on the planet for 36 years. And I actually started going, God, there must be more to life than this, Jenny. Like, come on, there's other things going on here. And I made a decision. I don't know what prompted me to do it. I hadn't done any research on neuroscience and, Dr. Joe Dispenza at this point. And I just made the decision, if I can talk to myself in this nasty narrative, which I had been doing for 36 years, I'm going to have a go at, and I called it inner coach. So I moved it to, I'm going to now consciously, as much as possible, start talking to myself in the kindest narrative possible. And I didn't know that what I was doing at the time, but within 3 days, my reality started to shift. And obviously what was happening in the brain is, the brain has neuroplasticity. So I was creating new neural pathways. I was running source energy through the new neural pathways of, Jenny's enough, Jenny's amazing, Jenny's this. And then I started to get emotionally involved with it. And I started to feel, higher vibrations. So it was like emotions such as joy, contentment. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but obviously I was reprogramming the subconscious belief systems. And it's taken me 4 years. I've done research every single day, implement anything that resonates before I pass it on to my clients, because I'm one of these people, you've got to talk the talk and walk the walk. Like, you can feel the difference between someone who's authentic and someone who's inauthentic. But for me, I did it for myself first. Before anyone else, I put myself first. And I think as women in particular, we are very much programmed as the feminine to nurture and emotionally regulate from a very early on, stage in childhood, that we're the responsible for everyone else's emotions. And I thought, I am going to stop people pleasing and I'm going to be the kindest person in my life. I'm going to be my own cheerleader. I'm going to be my own mother. I'm going to be my own father. I'm going to be my own husband. I'm going to be my own children. I was literally every single role you could imagine, I then created within myself. And from that state, everything shifted. So then obviously the universe sending a very different signal out now into the quantum field. The body, the nervous system was like, wow, Jenny's now safe. Jenny's not running from the saber-toothed tiger. Oh, okay, let's get to intuition starts coming in, heightened, creative ideas start coming in, things that I would have never dreamed of doing before in business, I started doing. It all started with working out what I was saying to myself and how I shifted that narrative. And I think to get the most gain in this at a quick rate is, one, you stop criticizing yourself and you stop criticizing others, because when you criticize others, your subconscious knows no difference. You're actually talking about yourself. Yeah. Plus, when you judge others, you're actually judging the part of yourself. So I worked that out, and that gave me the most, I guess, energy back. Took a while, but I didn't have the information I now have now. But it really did work. And that is when my life shifted. Like, it was so quick. And I think we can do this. I think they say it takes around 21 days to reprogram your subconscious. But I started reprogramming and within 3 days, because I noticed the signal changed. I noticed reality was changing around me. And I really do believe, or know, shall I say, because it's beyond belief now, but belief is obviously what creates our reality, whether you're conscious of it or not. And that really was the journey into what I do now, helping others. But also the communication with spirit for me was fundamental in recognizing our power, that we're interdimensional beings having this human experience, and why we are actually here. We are not here to live in survival mode like we get so programmed to be. We are here to thrive. We're here to live in abundance, or just remember we are abundance. We're here to serve others, serve humanity, but we've got to give it to ourselves first. We don't want to be coming from a depleted state. So I guess you could call it getting selfish in some respect. But I would say you make yourself your priority. Your number one priority is you.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's very true. It becomes natural. It becomes a
Yeah.
natural way of being. That's what I find.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people don't like it because you
They're
will, as
scared
I
of
say,
you.
lose people on the journey because they only love that version of you that self-abandons. And when you stop self-abandoning, you're putting your boundaries in, you're not giving your energy away so freely. That is going to push people away, but in a good way. But I do find that's the hardest part of awakening and ascension, because it's going to hit every core part of being human. I'm being excluded from the tribe, therefore I could get eaten by the big saber tooth. But when you recognize it for what it is, and you become your kind of own cheerleader, and you're like, Jenny, you're safe, I've got you. And it's not about not wanting connection, but it's recognizing that connection with people in, say, a growth mindset feels very different to people who are quite happy to remain in victim state. And they will want to keep pulling you back down. And it's subconscious. It's not they're nasty or anything like that. It's subconscious because they only know that version of you. So it's going to hit all their programming or their paradigm, as Bob Proctor would say.
That's true.
Yeah, that is very true.
Very true.
It's hard though, isn't it? It really is hard. Especially if it's friends or in family. In some respects, family can be an interesting one. I love that you ladies work together. That's great. And you're on the same journey. I love it. But yeah, family's an interesting one. But I think for me, it was almost, you don't have to cut people out. It's not like that. But you kind of, you boundary off your energy, and you recognize that certain people you're going to have to be more on a superficial level. And that was the hardest journey for me, because as somebody that just seeks connection with everyone, and coming from a place of my own agenda there, safety for me would be if I could please you. And so when that was reprogrammed and I wasn't pleasing people and everyone buggered off, I was like, oh, okay, I'm on my own here. But for me, the more I did the work, the more I can't even describe the souls that have come into my reality over the last few years. Heart-led women in particular. I work with a lot of men as well. I've got a men's group, which is brilliant, because the men, I just love working with men that are awakening. It's just amazing. But the women that I have around me, because we need our girlfriends, don't we? They're just so heart-led, and we're all on this journey together. And I think it takes courage for someone to step out and go, I'm going to do the work, I'm going to lose the people, and then I'm going to create a community, because I think that's why we're here, because we're here to lead the way for others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I know that we have got this toolkit. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it.
That's right.
Absolutely.
We'd be running for the hills.
Right? Well, and it's funny because we put those boundaries up, and those people sit on the other side and disconnect from us. But then at the same sense, because we've created such this joy inside of our boundary, we now are starting to attract our true soul tribe that's coming to us to, journey through the life. And like you say, you don't have to not talk to those people ever again, but they just have their little, you're on the shelf.
Yeah. You can love them, love them from a distance. And I think for me, what really I found hard was my family. And, I love my family unconditionally, but there was a period where I was so desperate to wake them up. And I was so desperate to, have that connection. And I wanted to share everything with them. And I can remember my mum, and she won't mind me saying this, I can remember getting so excited about telling her, oh my God, mum, we live in this quantum field. And, I was talking all about quantum mechanics, quantum entanglement. And then she just said, Jenny, I really wish I could understand you. But I wanted to do was connect in that information, and she is really open to spirit. I mean, she's very similar to me in the fact that she can channel and all of that. But we're at different stages, and that for me was the hardest part, is the family thing, because you want to bring your family with you. But what I did work out, and this I find really exciting, that the more work I did on myself, it's a bit like, if you think of like a hanky, do you handkerchief? Do you say that in Canada?
Yeah.
Handkerchief. So like a hanky, I call hanky in England, so hanky. And you've got you in the middle, right? So you're in the middle, and you're starting to ascend, and you're starting to do your work. And you have your, your key family members on each corner point. As you kind of raise up, obviously you bring them up with you. Yeah. And I noticed that my relationships improved with my family, with friends. And it wasn't that they changed. It was the fact that I learned how to respond, and what was worth my energy and what wasn't worth my energy. And that for me was probably the biggest shift. And they have increased their vibration through us. And I heard this the other day. I thought it was fascinating, that one awakened soul, our energetics affects 10 million people. So wow. Instead of us, going around going, you must wake up, you must wake up. All we need to do is work on ourselves, and we're going to help shift 10 million people. I just thought, wow, okay, great. Because I know a lot of people. That's a lot of 10 million people per person. So that got me. So every time, if you hear things that are happening in the world, I'm like, that's all right, because I'm waking up 10 million people, it's fine. And then they'll wake 10 million people up. So and we do that, Dolores Cannon, shift to the fifth dimension or the new earth. But I have noticed that in my reality, you only start coming into contact with people in a more fifth dimensional awareness. So you don't hear the fear-based narratives anymore. You don't concern yourself with the fear-based narratives. You know what's happening, but you recognize your energy is the thing that's going to help in that situation. Mm-hmm. So, it's a very different way of living.
It really is.
Yeah, and you face more realities as you go through life, because as the people give you more lessons in life, right? The more you... Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think whenever something happens in my life, before I would obviously be in a victim state, so it'd be poor me, why has this happened to me? Now it's like, okay, what's the lesson?
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll find that as you shift in vibration, so as you ascend, what can happen is, you get the old pattern come in, and it's I can't remember who said it. I'm sure it's Earl Nightingale, who is one of the teachers. I think he's passed now, because it was quite a long time ago, but Earl Nightingale's a good one for your followers to have a look at, because he teaches this stuff. But he was saying that, anything that shows up in your current reality is from the past thought processes. So, if something turns up and you're like, I thought I've already dealt with that. Yeah, you have. It's just it's the last little bit of the thought process. So it's you make a different choice, and then obviously then you don't have to follow and do that lesson as such. You might get it diluted. It might keep coming back. But it's also recognizing, you probably have done the healing work. It's just the manifestation of your past, thoughts. So a lot of people get discouraged, and they're like, I thought I dealt with all this. And I'm like, well, yeah, you have. And now you recognize, oh, yeah, that's that pattern. That person is, it's the same energy. It's just a different face, or it's the same situation at work, but a different scenario. And you go, oh, yeah, I recognize it for what it is now. So, yeah, well done you. It's that kind of understanding that everything coming in is either like a new lesson, if it's something to explore, or it could just be the past pattern from the past thoughts. So it's okay, I've dealt with that. Yeah, thank you, universe, got it, responding in a different way, and I'm moving on. And I think a lot of us, we live in the past, or we kind of project into the future, as opposed to just living in the present moment, which is way more fun. And it's so spontaneous. The universe just, I get out of bed. I don't put my feet on the floor until I've got myself in an excited state by saying, to the universe, what are you going to bring in today, universe? Like, what exciting people, what exciting things are going to come in? And something happened to me as we were talking about the YouTuber that I was part of his film just before we got on to the actual podcast. And I was cleaning the bathroom on a Friday, 8:30 in the morning. So I wasn't expecting anything exciting to happen. And then I get this email from this YouTuber's managing agent going, "Can we come and film you for a reading?" And I was like, oh, and this was when I was scrubbing the toilet. So when you get yourself into that state, what I love is that you don't know how it's going to happen because logically you couldn't possibly imagine. The universe provides, and that's life for me. I think that's when you surrender and you trust, and that's exciting. Like every single day, it's what exciting things are going to happen. And a little bit of science part here is that I don't know if you ladies have heard of the reticular activating system in the brain. You heard of the RAS?
No.
No. So this part of the brain is, so the RAS for short, but the reticular activating system, and it filters our reality. So we only see 10% of our reality. And when we prime it to look for the exciting things, we're saying to ourselves before we get out of bed, oh, it's going to be the most amazing day today. I'm going to see joy everywhere. What you're actually doing is you're priming your reticular activating system, and it will filter reality to see it. So when people say, oh, I'm not abundant, or I'm not lucky, or I don't get these opportunities, the opportunities are already there. It's just they're not looking at it. They're not sending the energy over. So if we can get really good at programming or priming that part of the brain before we even start the day, that's going to lead to a beautiful day. And that's also going to bring in opportunities that potentially were always there, but you just didn't focus on them. So this is why I love the science meets spirituality part, because, a lot of people go, oh, this is a woo-woo, Jenny. No, it's not woo-woo now. Thank you. Thank you to Dr. Joe Dispenza for that. It's not woo-woo. It's all been proven by neuroscience and quantum physics. So this is where I think we're at a very exciting time on the planet, because a lot of people are going to be getting a lot of information, and it's going to help people wake up if you can kind of feed the ego a bit by going, oh, there is the science to back this now. I mean, we already know, like, science is kind of, catching up to what we already knew, but it's going to help others wake up, because a lot of people will be on the fence about it. Oh, it's woo woo. I kind of want to believe it, but you can't prove it. Well, yeah, we can now. So
yeah. Right. And that's the best part of it all, is that it's now starting to be proven that people are like, oh, okay, I guess maybe I do have to buy into some of this. So we could honestly talk to you for hours and hours.
Just because
I'm not gonna lie, like, you have so much information, and you're just like making my brain just think about different scenarios, and I love that. And I try to incorporate waking up with joy and doing those things, but I'm totally going to do that moving forward.
Get excited.
Yeah.
Use that. What's the universe gonna bring in today? Like, almost like a childlike state. And we forget that, don't we, as adults, that childlike state.
Yes.
But really what you're doing there is you're calming the nervous system, and you're in the creative state, and you're priming that reticular activating system, and it's going to be a good day.
I love that. Well, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I'm in England. So if you want a face-to-face session, it's in England on the south coast. So my business name is The Intuitive Path. So my website is theintuitivepath.co.uk. Instagram, _intuitive_path, and Facebook, The Intuitive Path. And I just love connecting to people. I run a free community, and we do have people from all over the world on it. And it's just a lovely way for us, the light workers, to connect, or starseed souls. And I have a lot of fun. I just have a lot of fun just helping others and guiding others. But we're all here. We're all walking each other home. And it's been an absolute privilege to be on your podcast today. And I really want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it. And, we're glad that we can be your first Canadian podcast.
Yeah.
And everybody will just now want you on their podcast.
Yes.
So
hopefully. I love a podcast.
So if you had a final thought to leave with us and our followers, what would it be?
Oh, Tuffy, there's so many. I guess, do you know what I just heard them say? Look for the joy because joy is our natural state. And remember that science part. Look for it. Prime your reticular activating system to find the joy in every day. Because when you start doing that, you're going to start regulating your nervous system, and it's going to have a knock-on effect. So that was direct from spirit, because I was like, I don't know what to say, and they just said, find the joy in every day. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That's a beautiful message, and thank you to Spirit for bringing that through you for everybody. And we'd love to have you on again in the future.
Oh yeah,
because I feel like there's just so many different things that we can go into and delve into.
Avenues, yeah.
Yeah, I could talk for hours. As you know, I do. I love to be asked a question, and I go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. Very much so. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Everyone else, we will see you on the next one.
You bet you will.